Hello everyone, TLSG here, back again with another Marvel Snap video. So as you can tell, we have a few collector's caches that we're able to pull, 7 to be exact. And we're gonna pull them all the way up until the point where we get at least one card, and then we're gonna pause. But before I start going through opening the caches, we are getting so incredibly close to 2,000 subscribers. We have rocketed over 1,500. The support from you guys is just incredible. It amazes me every day how much you guys continue to come back, how much you continue to support the channel and me as a creator. And so thank you guys. And if you're watching this and you're not subscribed and you've watched a few videos and you like what you see, maybe consider subscribing. It helps the channel grow and expand. Okay, with that out of the way, let's go ahead and start pulling some caches. So our first cache is a card. We pull Goose. So Goose is an interesting one. Goose has the ongoing ability, nobody can play 4, 5, or 6 cost cards at this location. And so this is particularly good in a small minion type deck. And so I'm thinking something like our Sera Swarm, maybe implementing her in to limit the amount of spaces that the opponent's able to play their big, large cards. And then just for reference, we pulled that at collection log level 3022. The last card that we got was all the way down at 2,950, a little over 70 levels between when we pulled this card and the last card. All in all, so far it's been fairly close to what it was before the Collector's Reserve update, but it's a very small sample size, only time will tell. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and head over into a deck draft and we will be right back. So I'm not sure who the other guy was, but I'm gonna be taking over for a while. And I actually did come up with the deck list. Well, I didn't come up with the deck list. A user on the Marvel Snap official Discord named Swapgo did, and then I tweaked it just a little bit to add in our new card, Goose. So whenever I saw this deck list, it was something I really wanted to try out because I've always had to ramp into Sandman. If we weren't able to ramp into Sandman, he just felt like he was not good, like we were going to lose too much tempo. But with this deck list, it focuses on very early game and then locking down the lanes late game, and then either pushing high power with cards like Namor, Warpath, Claw, and then finally buffing all of your other cards up with Spectrum. That way you can kind of flood a couple of locations early, slow down the flow with Sandman, and then cap it out with some of these high power, high quality drops. And so there's a lot of kind of cool combos in here. So namely the Ebony Maw combo. So Ebony Maw, of course, does have an ongoing ability. So does Sandman, so does Goose, so does Ant-Man. But the majority of these cards have ongoing abilities. But the cool utilization with Ebony Maw is that, let's say on turn 1 you drop either an Ant-Man or Quinjet. On turn 2 you draw into either Goose or Armor, and you drop it in that same lane. And then you cap it out with Ebony Maw and then the other, either Colossus, Goose, or Armor, to lock down that lane. And they're not going to be able to drop any 4, 5, or 6 cost cards in that lane. So then all of a sudden, overcoming 15 or more power in one lane, and you can only drop 1, 2, or 3 cost cards, becomes really difficult. And so running through the entire deck list really quickly. First up we have Ant-Man, who is a cheap ongoing card who's going to benefit from the Spectrum buff, but he's also a powerful card by himself if he goes into a capped out lane. We have Quinjet. Quinjet is just a cheap ongoing alternative for games that we don't draw into Ant-Man. We want to be able to get cards out onto the board early, and then every once in a while we may get an upside out of Quinjet, but he's mainly there to serve as a 1 cost 4 power after Spectrum reveals. We have Ebony Maw. You can't play this after turn 3, and then ongoing you can't play cards here. So he has an insanely high power level, but he has that pretty big drawback. But if we can limit them to either 1 card a turn, no 4, 5, or 6 cost cards in that lane, we can really lock down that location and make it difficult for them to win. And then we have Angela. She's here to kind of pad the board. So if we are dropping our low cost cards, as we're dropping cards throughout the game, she's going to get bigger and grow larger. And so we're going to be able to push additional power, even if we're only dropping, let's say, 1 card a turn. And then we have our new card, Goose. So ongoing, nobody can play 4, 5, or 6 cost cards at this location. And so he's going to be good to drop just before we drop Sandman, so like on turn 3, to surprise them into either not being able to play on curve or giving up that location altogether. We have Armor as a pretty cheap ongoing card, and he's going to be able to serve to protect some of our 1 cost cards from things like Killmonger. We have Colossus. He's another cheap ongoing card. He has the upside of being able to be dropped into negative locations like negative zone, and he's not going to lose power. We can drop him into Death's Domain and he won't lose power. We get some cool utilization from Colossus here, and we're going to be able to buff him up to a 5 power card, which is fairly decent. Then we have our Sandman, and I'm excited because this is the first time we've been able to have Sandman that we're going to feel okay dropping him on turn 4. We don't feel like we need to drop him as early as turn 3. We have other higher priority cards to drop on turn 3, such as the Ebony Maw. And so Sandman here feels like we're going to be able to drop him on 4 pretty consistently to be able to slow down the rest of the game. We have Namor. Whenever we're only dropping 1 or so card per turn in the late game, Namor's going to come in pretty handy. He's going to be a 4-cost card that's going to be able to push 10 power onto the board if he's the only card in that lane. And then we can buff him up with Spectrum. We can push more power in that lane with Claw. We can do a lot of cool things with the Namor drop. Then we have Warpath. Warpath has the ongoing ability if you have any locations that are empty plus 4 power. So he can be a 4-cost 9 power card. And then we can also buff him up by 2 with Spectrum. Then we have Claw. Claw's going to allow us to push power into lanes that we couldn't play cards into directly. So like Sanctum Sanctorum. We're going to be able to push 5 power over to the right, even though we're not able to play a card directly in that location. And then finishing it all off, we have Spectrum. Spectrum has the on reveal ability, give your ongoing cards a plus 2 power. So that is going to hit just about all of our cards in this deck on that last turn to kind of swing it in our direction and make for a surprise finisher. Okay, and so that is the general idea of the deck list. We're going to go ahead and jump into a few games. All right, first up we have Luckman. And Luckman, I would like you to meet Sandman. We're going to be dropping him probably on turn 4. Unfortunately, we have a lot of really low cost cards. Being able to have something to drop on turn 1 or turn 2, we have about 7 cards in this deck. And we don't draw into any of them so far. Hopefully we draw... Beautiful. So we draw into Olympia, which is going to kind of help us out. It's going to help us out quite a bit, actually. We're going to be able to drop our Angela, and I think we're going to drop Angela into Olympia. Monster Metropolis is going to be a good target for our Namor, being that he's going to be 10 power, and then we can buff him up to a 12 power. And then with the Spectrum buff to 12 and Monster Metropolis, he would become 15 power. So we're dropping Angela into Olympia, and then... Oh, that's beautiful. So Spectrum is going to be able to be played into Kamartaj, and that is going to give a double buff to all of our ongoing cards. So what we're going to do is we're just going to push a lot of power into this Olympia lane, and then on turn 4, we will likely drop Sandman probably here to cap it out. Turn 5, we'll drop Namor here, and then turn 6, we'll do a double reveal of Spectrum to buff up all but Angela in Olympia to hopefully push us up over here. Hopefully it's enough to push us up in Monster Metropolis, and we should be pretty good to go. And so this deck list feels like it makes much better use of Sandman rather than having to get lucky, get a high roll to really slow down and cap out the opponent. And so they do steal one of our cards, but most likely it's going to be, they steal 2 of our cards, but most likely it's going to be a low cost, something like Goose, Ant-Man, Ebony Maw. We have most of our other high cost cards, except for, oh yeah, we have all of our high cost cards. And so they're not going to get a lot of use or upside out of whatever they drew. It's going to be pretty low power. So I am okay with that. And so we're going to go ahead and continue. We're going to drop our Sandman. We are going to limit them to 1 card per turn moving forward. So if they want to drop something like Sentinel, oh, so they did steal our Colossus. If they're wanting to drop something like Sentinel, something like Moon Girl, they're going to have to really work for it to make it worthwhile. And so we are going to go ahead and drop our Namor, which is going to give us a decent chance to win this lane. I think with the plus 6 power boost that we're going to give to this lane, that should be enough to try and be competitive. At least hopefully it will be enough to be competitive. And if not, they are going to have to invest resources either here or here. And so I think we have a pretty decent shot here. And so now their Luckman is working within the Sandman constraints. He's trying to figure out what the best play here is. And then we have a pretty decent play line. So they could always do something like Sentinel here, but the double reveal isn't going to benefit them anymore because they do have 7 cards. So they're not going to get much upside out of like a late game Moon Girl or anything like that. And so they actually extend the game by 1 turn. Interesting. Okay, that gives us a little flexibility, but I'm not sure we like it because what we can do a Claw, but that takes his power down by 5. Actually, I think that's worth it. So we take this power down by 5, as long as they don't have a really big card. So something like, if they have a Devil Dino, that's 14. And so by taking it down 5 here, we actually lose a lot of value. What if we did something like a Goose here, that becomes tough as well. And we don't have any more cards in our deck, so what we have is what we have. And I guess what we could do is we could do a Warpath here. That becomes a 9 power card. Depending on what it looks like, we could drop our Spectrum here on turn 7. That would become an 11 power card. They're going to be a plus 14. Do we think we need to push power over here or not? I don't know. But I think we're going to gamble it here. We're going to drop Claw into Monster Metropolis. I feel like he is going to drop a Devil Dino here. Okay, so he didn't drop a Devil Dino this turn at least, but we were a little bit worried about winning Limbo, which I actually, thinking about it, I don't think we should have been. I think it would have been okay because we were going to buff it up by 6, which is a very large buff. So if anything, we should have went with Warpath there. We are going to try our best here. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. This becomes 12. So if they drop a Devil Dino here, we're going to tie for that one. We should come up over their power level with Claw. I think we win anyways, and I think we've been overthinking it. So I think even with a Devil Dino here, they don't have a way to generate an additional card afterwards. And so I think we're okay. At most, they can buff up Collector by 1 here. Limbo location shouldn't be an issue. I anticipate a Devil Dino in Monster Metropolis, which we, of course, our Namor will tie with at 12 power. So they both become... I calculated that wrong. So we did not tie with it because the 12 that I was factoring in for Namor was included in the Monster Metropolis buff. And so we got very, very fortunate there. Had we just passed and went with the original playline, we actually hurt ourselves by playing the Claw here. And we could have always done like Warpath into Kamartage to feel a little more competitive instead of dropping it here and just foregone his buff. I think would have been the better playline, but we got lucky that we still squeaked out that victory. Because of our really large lead in Limbo, but we got very, very fortunate that we were able to tie in Monster Metropolis still. Okay, so next up we have Power Cosmic. We are going to start by dropping our Ant-Man. You're going to drop our Ant-Man into Nidavellir, and then next turn we're going to be able to follow up with something like Goose, or maybe if we draw into Armor, we'll be able to drop that there as well. And so on turn 4, shuffle your hand into your deck and then draw 3 cards. So we are going to want to push as much power as we can out into Nidavellir as we can, and we're going to limit them from being able to play things like Shang-Chi, from being able to play their large cards by using Goose here. And then they do increase the cost of our Quinjet with their Iceman. And we do draw into Colossus here, but I don't think we play Colossus into Nidavellir. I think what we do is we go ahead and drop it into Death's Domain. Since we know that we have it this turn, we're going to make sure that we get the upside from it. After this turn, we are going to shuffle the 3 cards that we have left in our hand into our deck and draw 3 new ones. And maybe we'll be able to draw something like Sandman that will be able to cap them out from being able to play more than 1 card a turn. And actually, they dropped a Wave, which is pretty bad for us because our only high cost card is Spectrum here. And of course, we don't necessarily want to drop Spectrum early. So I think we're going to probably just play our Armor here. We're not going to play to curve, unfortunately. I think that is how it falls and how we need to play it. And so they have Dr. Doom, which sends out the Doom bots. And then how do we win one of the other locations? So we can play Sandman this turn, and then Spectrum would not be able to cap out this location. Do we forego Sandman this game? So I think maybe we forego Sandman here. We know that we're going to be able to send a 8 power bonus to Nidavellir with our Spectrum. We're going to be able to push and tie Death's Domain unless they have something that can send power over into Death's Domain, which they do, but are they going to utilize it is the question here. Are they going to move their Nightcrawler out and over into Death's Domain? I think is the biggest question that we have and the biggest question mark. So we're going to go ahead and play Spectrum into the middle location. If they leave Nightcrawler here because they have this lane 1, then we may have a shot. It's going to be slight. But we may have a shot. So let's go ahead and lock in Spectrum. So they do play a card into Death's Domain. So unfortunately, that is going to 4, 5, 6. That's going to tie us for this mid location. So we may actually come up over and win here. And so we win by 3, they win by 2. So a very, very close game. Had their Jubilee pulled something a little bit bigger, then we wouldn't have won this one. And if their Sunspot had buffed up any larger, we would have either drawn or lost. Just so very, very close. Okay, so next up we have Guruthos. And we do have our Ant-Man, we have Angela. Ant-Man's not going to reveal in this first turn. So I think we play Ant-Man into Lemuria. Depending on what we draw into, we may do Angela into mid here. On turn 2, on turn 3, we can drop whatever we draw. Ooh, that's difficult. But that's good for our Colossus, but that's about it. I think we gamble here. I think we play Angela into the unknown location. We're then going to be able to follow up on turn 3 with most likely something that we draw this turn. And then, okay, so we do get the upside of having armor. So we're going to be able to protect our cards here, or do we sneak an armor into Lemuria so that they can't destroy what they're wanting to destroy? Because I would anticipate that they drop like a 1-cost card or something here. I think that may be the play. Even though we're going to buff up over time in Muir Island, I think blocking their Bucky Barnes destruction is going to be more ideal and more key. So let's go ahead and drop our armor. Ooh, so they do drop 2 cards here. So is it 2 1-cost cards? So we're going up against another Death Wave deck, which is pretty common right now. But they want to destroy these 2, but they're just not going to be able to because our armor countered them. And so we're going to drop our Sandman here. Turn 5, we can drop either Warpath or Claw. Claw being a good one to push power into the negative zone, and then we can either do Spectrum here to cap it out, Spectrum here to give us a little additional boost if they're going to be able to win negative zone. And we can always do Claw and then Warpath if it looks like we need a little bit more push in one lane versus across the board. We have a little bit of flexibility here. So we do drop our Sandman. They are only going to be able to drop 1 card per turn moving forward. And so with a Death Wave style deck, that completely counters what they want to do. They want to be able to drop and outpace us on that last turn by dropping more than 1 large unit. They're not going to be able to anymore. And so how do we want to play this one? Warpath would be a 9 power card, which would be a massive unit. But Claw is going to give us power into negative zone. It's going to give us 5, which with the negative zone, that's probably the perfect location for Claw to push power over into, because they're going to have to drop 8 power to compete with the negative zone here. So I think that probably gives us the most upside. And knowing that they're only going to be able to drop... Oh, and they drop Taskmaster here? Interesting. Okay. And then I think we cap out this lane, because I think we have a good shot of winning this one. Actually, I think we have a really good shot of winning here. So had we dropped Spectrum, they would have to drop 8 power into negative zone to compete with it. If they did not drop 8 power here, they would have to drop resources here to keep this one, because we're going to give it +2, which is going to put us just over what they had. And then they'd have to swing at least 2 lanes. And so, yeah, we had a very big lead against the Death Wave. As long as we can draw into our Sandman, it does feel pretty good. Okay, next up we have Bill. Bill being a fellow infinite rank. So we draw into Scarlet Witch, which is not great, but it'll allow us to change a non-favorable location if we need to. So I think we're going to go with Ant-Man into the hub, and then depending on what we draw next turn, and they draw up Sunspot, which is going to be a little bit difficult for us to compete with, but I think that's probably okay. And then Monster Metropolis being a good location if we draw into Namor, because if he's the only card there, he's going to be a 12 power card after we use our Spectrum. And then if it looks like we're losing it, maybe we change it with Scarlet Witch. And so they use Psylocke to ramp into something that they want to drop on turn 4. So maybe either a Sandman of their own, or maybe a Mr. Negative, or the 2 like really big 4 power cards that you want to ramp into. So I'm curious what we'll end up seeing here. And so maybe we do something like Goose and Scarlet Witch to cap this one out. They're only going to be able to place 1, 2, or 3 cost cards into this location. We are going to change it, which is a little bit scary. And then all 3 of these cards will get a buff when we drop Spectrum. That'll leave us open to dropping Sandman on the following turn, and I think we'll be okay. And so we drop Goose. They're not going to be able to drop any large cards in this lane any longer. And then we change it into Shadowland, so they actually get a negative ninja out of that. And since it's capped out for us, we don't. Oof. And then we draw into Sandman. So District X is the last location that pops up, and it switches out our hand for 10 random cards. So I am a little bit torn, because we're going to be able to do something like drop a Sandman on turn 5. We'll be able to drop Claw. We could do our Spectrum to buff up Shadowland. So I guess it depends on what it looks like they are playing towards in the Shadowland. If it looks like they're going to try to compete with us, then maybe we need to focus and push our Spectrum to buff that one up. If not, then I think we go with a Mystique to copy our claws ongoing ability and push additional power into District X. That's our tentative playline. That's what we're thinking right now. All right, so Bill's thinking really, really hard here. So Bill ends up dropping Professor X into District X, but that's not going to be enough. They may think it's going to be enough right now, but it's not. So they are probably under the impression that since it's locked down, and since we already dropped Claw, we're not going to be able to push any more power. And we just happen to get the perfect draw from District X here. And so we're going to go ahead and react like, oh man, you dropped our Professor X. We lose that lane. So now they just need to turn, in their head, they only need to turn one of these locations. And they can probably turn Shadowland. But we're going to have more power in Monster Metropolis. But with them only being able to drop one card, I don't think they can turn two unless they have something sneaky like a Doombot. And we did bait out the snap. I'm not going to snap back. I feel bad because we were just kind of talking through the playline. But let's go ahead and drop our Mystique here. That's going to copy our Claw's ongoing ability, push even more power over into District X to push that one in our favor. They pull in some of our cards with Doc Ock, but that's of course not going to be enough to win more than one lane. It's very, very fortunate that we drew into Mystique there, which allowed us to push additional power into District X and sneak out the win in that location. Okay, so next up we have Happy Matt, and the first location is Lemuria. We're not going to be able to play anything in that location, and so they said snap, so we're going to go ahead and oblige. We're going to go ahead and snap, and we're going to ask them in return snap. So we're going to say thumbs up. And so then the Strange Academy is going to push cards out of there after turn 5, at the end of turn 5. So I think what we do here is we're going to play probably our Colossus. And then next turn, we're either going to play Ebony Maw and Goose or Quinjet and Goose. And that's going to give us the ability to play Sandman on turn 4. We're going to have this lane largely capped out. We're going to make sure that they can't drop any large power cards into Lemuria. So we are going to go with Goose Quinjet here. And then depending on what they drop, so that's going to limit them. They can't drop any 4, 5, or 6 cost cards. And so that's going to make it a lot harder for them to come up over and win this location. And so then I think we do drop our Sandman into the Savage Land, tentatively. He is a 1 power card. Actually, do we drop him into the Strange Academy and hope that he gets pushed over? I think we just play him into Savage Land, and then depending on what they drop here, they are going to be able to have additional cards pushed over into Lemuria. They're going to be able to move their Nightcrawler over into Lemuria as well. And so it is going to be kind of difficult here. We do know that all of us are only able to play 1 card a turn now. And so if we do something like an Ant-Man here, and then that gives us the option to do Namor here to be a 10 power lead, and then maybe a Spectrum here if we get that instead. It just depends on what they play this turn and where their cards end up going. And so they have a Hellcat, which is a very, very high power 2-cost card. So we may be in trouble in Lemuria. And so the 8 power Hellcat does go over into Lemuria, unfortunately. And so we do have Spectrum here, but it just feels like it's going to be pretty tough to utilize. We could do Spectrum. That is going to give us 4, 5, 6 power here, and it's going to give us 2, 4, 6, 8 power here. But then if they play any cards into this middle location, then we lose. We could do no more here. And so if we are hoping that maybe they just drop a card here instead of in here, but they're running a low to the ground, we're going to gamble here. I'm going to say that they are going to play their 1 resource, over into Lemuria to win that location. And then if that's the case, then we buff up all of our cards with Spectrum. If they don't drop a resource into Strange Academy, then we win Strange Academy, and we could potentially win the game. That's what we're going to lock in with. I think we do lose this one, but let's see it play out. And so they move their Nightcrawler over, which is perfect. They drop Chavez to extend their lead in Savage Land, but our Spectrum is going to be able to come up over Lemuria's power level. Strange Academy, we win from our Spectrum being the only card in that location. So because we were able to read and anticipate, luckily, what they were going to do, we're able to pull out the 8 cube win. Happy Matt, I feel bad about that one, Happy Matt. That was a very good game. It just came down to a lucky read at the end. And And so with that last win out of the way, we are going to go ahead and end this video here. So this deck list makes much better use of Sandman than any of our other like ramp style decks where we were just trying to high roll and get him out early. So thank you Swapgo for posting this in the Discord. It allowed me to kind of tweak it just ever so slightly, and it performs wonderfully. Now, not all games you're going to be able to keep pace and keep tempo, but it gives you a lot of opportunities to actually utilize Sandman. And the only card in this deck list that comes from deep pool 3 is going to be Goose and then potentially Quinjet, which you can switch those two out for other low cost ongoing cards. So maybe a lizard if you're confident that they're not going to cap out that location, and another low cost card, so maybe even a sunspot, which wouldn't get the buff from Spectrum, but would be able to grow up over time if you needed him to in a pinch. But with that being said, I am going to go ahead and end the video here. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Your support on these videos has just been phenomenal. Every time I post one, I get a little bit nervous that it's not going to get views, it's not going to get likes, and then they always start rolling in, and it still amazes me every single time how much you guys support me and support this channel. If you did enjoy the video and you're not subscribed, maybe consider subscribing to the channel. We're posting daily Marvel Snap content, and so if you like this video and you want to see more, subscribe to make sure that you don't miss any of our uploads. And as always, if you did enjoy the video, leave it a like down below, leave a comment, let me know what you're thinking. I love interacting with you guys. So with that being said, we are going to end the video here. This has been TLSG. Later, guys.